Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. Piggybacking on yesterday's briefing, I'd like to go a little bit further when it comes to the issue of these rhetoricians trying to use the hysteria about critical race theory as their stalking horse to silence any and all dissent in the society. I'm going to start by raising a simple point of law, a modest legal question. Should Chrisopher Rufo and the race-baiting Zealots, who have been pushing all this racist hysteria about critical race theory, be sued by the authors whose books they've been attacking, not just through the right-wing school boards, but also through these right-wing hate mills like Fox, etc.? Cornell Law School defines tortious interference as a claim for damages against a defendant who wrongfully interferes with the plaintiff's contractual or business relationships. Tortious interference typically involves a contract, and I don't know what contracts the authors of these books or their respective publishers have with these school districts, but we do know that the claims Chrisopher Rufo and the various imitation wannabes out there have been imitating and spouting are patently and provably false on their face. No one is teaching any studies saying that white people, much less white school children, are born racist. There's no science about it, and there's nobody who's putting forward that idea. No school library has any books pushing that line either, but the lies that have been told and promoted by Chrisopher Rufo and his ilk, including people in the government, have led to a loss of income by these authors and their publishers, not to mention irreparable damage to their reputations, all because of lies. And the people like Chrisopher Rufo and his fellow travelers who have told these lies, these are provably false, and they told these lies intentionally for the purpose of having these books removed. Now, to them, this was a political operation to prove that white power still has some muscle behind it. But the truth of the matter is they were interfering with the business contracts that these people had, and they did it based on lies, things that simply were not true. These are not small little technicalities. They were lying about the content of the books and the point of the books themselves. So why have they been doing it? Why has this been going on? Why is it that these racist rhetoricians have been lying and lying big, and apparently are not at all concerned about the consequences? Well, it's because there's been no real-world consequences for any of them for the lies that they've been telling. Nobody has been holding them to account and letting them know that if you keep making all of these accusations that you know are not true, you're lying about what these people's books have in them and what they've been saying. If you keep doing this, you're going to be dragged into court. Chrisopher Rufo and his pals have been waiting to see if anyone's going to actually impose consequences, and because nobody has, as far as they're concerned, great. That means that this is one we get to do for free. The false and defamatory claims they've made about the content of these books are obviously provably false. Now, what if someone were to make them have to answer for their lies? And by the way, before you say, well, that would be far-fetched, keep in mind, Donald Trump and his pals have found out the hard way about that one. Dominion Voting Systems and Smartmatic, they've sued Fox, Newsmax, One America News, and they're also suing people like Sidney Powell and others for the lies that they told about Dominion Voting Systems, Smartmatic, and their employees. And what a surprise! These clowns have all shut up about Dominion and Smartmatic all of a sudden. You haven't heard them doing the garbage about, well, what about Dominion voting systems in Venezuela and algorithms and backdoors into their systems? They haven't been talking about that, have you? You haven't heard that in months. Yeah, when those lawsuits started coming down in the fall, that's when they shut up about it. The white right pretty much have the patent on baseless lying, although the white left is not far behind. But the thing is, these clowns have been doing this character assassination, and they've been doing this asinine hyperbole where they do everything short of actually saying what the direct lie is supposed to be, that eventually they decided, well, hell, let's just go ahead and tell the lie altogether. See, if you go back about 20 years to the eve of the Second Iraq War, W was going to all of these rallies and saying, Saddam, 9/11, 9/11, Iraq, Iraq.
Saddam Hussein is a threat to our nation. September the 11th changed the strategic thinking. Before September the 11th, many in the world believed that Saddam Hussein could be contained. Saddam Hussein aids and protects terrorists, including members of Al-Qaeda.
What W and his pals were doing was they were tiptoeing up to the line. It's a classic rhetorical trick, creating a false association in people's minds. You do that by taking two completely unrelated subjects and you just mention them in the same sentence together over and over and over again. But when the white media finally woke up from their money-induced coma and their corporate bosses told them, okay, we've gotten enough time now and we've collected whatever government favors we're going to get. Okay, we'll let you ask one or two tough questions. When Bush finally got cornered on it, he admitted,
this administration never said that the 9/11 attacks were orchestrated between Saddam and al-Qaeda. We did say there were numerous contacts between Saddam Hussein and al-Qaeda. He's a threat because he was a sworn enemy to the United States of America, just like al-Qaeda.
You see how that little verbal sleight of hand works? And it's deliberate. That way, when people point the finger at them and say, you said that Saddam was behind 9/11, that he was the one who carried out 9/11, then Bush would be able to, quote unquote, truthfully say, we never actually said that Iraq and Saddam carried out the 9/11 attacks. All of a sudden, he was walking back all that stuff. Yep, those goalposts grew legs and started running now, didn't they? See, that's the game that the white right's been playing for the longest time. We're going to dance up to the line and use weasel words. Well, the problem is they had gotten away with it for so long with no consequences that a number of them decided, well, hell, why the world should we be sitting here doing this soft shoe stuff? Let's just go ahead and cross the line. I mean, it's not like there's going to be any consequences. So they went from merely playing the game of killing people by innuendo to let's just go ahead and lie flat out. Keep in mind, these right-wing nuts in the white right media, these are the idiots who talk about the punks from Covington, high school who won a tiny settlement with the media, but Fox and their right-wing pals, they're being sued for billions. And that's the reason why these guys have suddenly gotten all quiet when it comes to those defamatory lies against Dominion and Smartmatic and their employees that they had previously been telling. Oh yeah, it used to be every night they were telling lies, now all of a sudden they're quiet about it. Yeah, because Dominion and Smartmatic have imposed consequences. They're actually telling them, you know what, you've been telling these lies on the air, now we're going to give you a chance to prove them in court. And it's not just Chris Rufo who needs to be held accountable. It's the Manhattan Institute who pays for this garbage. I did the video essay telling you about how for 30 plus years, the Manhattan Institute has been behind all manner of anti-black racist smear campaigns and propaganda. Their employees and people who have been mobbed up with them for the longest time, like Charles Murray, the author of The Bell Curve, he was a Manhattan Institute alumni, and Heather McDonald, who wrote her fiction book, The War on Cops, or as I call it, The War That Never Was, she's another Manhattan Institute employee. Chrisopher Rufo, of course, he works for the Manhattan Institute. So this stuff is not just dropping out of the sky. This is a persistent, sustained, organized racial effort that's being waged here. And we know where it's coming from. So Chris Rufo needs to be held to account. Any of these school board members who've been making these slanderous and defamatory claims about these books needs to be held to account. These authors and publishers need to be tallying up how much money they've lost, how much revenue they've been deprived of because of complete and thorough lies. And I think that some of them, even now, are beginning to realize that maybe they stuck their necks out a little bit too far. That when you kick up this much sand, sooner or later, somebody's going to do something. That's the reason why when it came time for them to ban Mouse, what they did was they tried to find something they could actually hang their argument on. So they claim, well, there's somebody was being hanged in one of the books and there was a tiny depiction that could be nudity. And do kids need to see that? So now all of a sudden it's a matter of we're not going to make stuff up on this one. We got to be more careful. After all, what if you do it too many times? Sooner or later, your luck runs out. Law of averages has to kick in sooner or later. But the question that I'm asking is whether or not Chrisopher Rufo and whether or not these other individuals who you've seen pushing lies about these books, putting aside the obvious anti-black racism here, whether or not they should be sued. Does this count as tortious interference, or at the very least, shouldn't this be left for a courtroom to figure out? And that also goes for the white right media organizations who have been signal boosting this nonsense, these lies. Should they also be held to account in a court of law? It's a fair question, and one that's long overdue. Because you see, what the white supremacist trash like Chrisopher Rufo are all scared about, what made these guys pee their pants was that starting in 2020, they saw the absolute undeniable proof that the grassroots could make changes in the society and didn't need the legislature to do it. You could do it at the street level, and you could actually change things in a way that would make it where no matter how hard line your Republican legislature is, or no matter how compliant your Democratic legislature is, they wouldn't be able to do anything about it. Oh, whatever happened to all the crap and deflections and excuses that we used to hear about qualified immunity? We can't go after the police, qualified immunity. And those police union contracts you see, that was the line of crap that we were getting from the CNNs and the Washington Post and the New York Times and others. They were all floating their own line of bull to try to give us an excuse and white-splain why they can't do anything. We can't touch the police. All of them saying, well, it's just so difficult. Here's the problem. Here's the problem. Then people took to the streets and made the block hot. They showed that the enforcement arm of white supremacy was not going to be able to protect the politicians and their boosters from the righteous anger of the people being killed in the streets. And after that, all of a sudden, the prosecutors found, well, we can bring charges. And it doesn't take protest to do it. And we can get convictions. And the convictions can also withstand scrutiny of appeal. Qualified immunity is still in the books. The police unions' contracts are still in effect with these cities. They haven't been changed. But what has changed is the police are not untouchable. So what does that tell us? It tells us they were lying. The prosecutors were lying. These legal experts, who are experts on nothing, by the way, who the white media puts out there, their job was not to actually explain what the law is. It was to white-splain why white supremacy cannot be interfered with, should not be changed, and why you should stop pushing for these changes. Don't demand any changes. Nothing's going to change. Except things did. However modestly, but the point is they did. So it just goes to show you can't believe what the white media says, can't believe what their flunkies that they put on air say. And this is the problem that the Chrisopher Rufos and others had. Because if you have a situation where people are actually able to influence the system of government and government policy and what it does, why, the United States is now under the greatest threat of all. And that is the threat that the United States might be forced to become a democracy. This country is not a democracy, not a republic either. It's a white supremacist racial Ponzi scheme. That's what this country has always been. It was not designed to be a democracy. It was not intended to be a democracy. It was intended and designed to be a system of giveaways, goodies, and guarantees for people classified as white. A racial hierarchy that was never supposed to change. And black people are now presenting this country with the greatest threat it's ever faced. The threat of actually having to become a democracy. And so we see the white right, who are doing the dirty work that the white left doesn't want to have to get its hands dirty with. They're just sitting back and letting them do it. And pretending that they're helpless. Oh, there's nothing we can do. Yeah, as soon as you start talking about abortion, here comes Gavin Newsom. Here comes that asinine Attorney General of New York State saying we're going to have retaliatory legislation. Oh, so the very thing you told black folks you couldn't do, all of a sudden you got some feminists who whine about abortion. Well, we can do some retaliatory legislation. We can do that. Yeah, when it comes to the feminists and LGBT and such, then they can go ahead and do that. Your Chrisopher Rufos and your Manhattan Institutes, they understand this. They are friends with, they are allies with, and in many cases married to the very people on the political left who they claim to be having so many problems with. The Cajun Skeletor, James Carville, he's married to a Republican strategist, Mary Madeline. But he ain't the only one. Joe Scarborough. He's former Republican congressman from Florida. And who's his current boo? Who's he booed up with these days? Mika the Bigot Brzezinski. Her father, Zbigniew Brzezinski, was an advisor to the Carter administration. So please don't think to yourself that these people are arguing with each other. They might have some petty squabbles amongst themselves. When it comes to black people, both the white left and the white right are in complete and thorough lockstep. They can agree on what needs to be done about us. The white right does the dirty work. And the white left tries to keep up the appearance of civility and altruism. But make no mistake, the reason that you see these guys freaking out like this and the reason that you see them go into the legislature screaming, we need laws, something, we got to do something. This is a gang of racists who are in a complete blind panic. Barack Obama wrote that asinine blue alert executive order, black people being killed in the streets, and who does he take sides with? The thugs in blue. And what happened was his girl Hillary lost, and it was the very people who he was trying to attack who were the ones who sent her packing and destroyed his legacy. And as a result, the white left understood, these Negroes are starting to get completely and thoroughly out of pocket. Something needs to be done. Enter the Manhattan Institute. This game of white privilege had to come to an end sometime. They know it. It can't go on forever because nothing ever does. This suicidal experiment in white hegemony was damned to failure from the very beginning. This has been an attempt by white society to defy gravity, and as they're finding out, it doesn't work. So the racist rhetoricians have been telling bigger and greater lies, and they've been saying them louder and louder, and as long as nobody's slapped them down or imposed consequences, it has emboldened them. The question is, how much longer is that going to last? When somebody thinks that they're getting away with something, it encourages them to take greater and greater gambles. But as W found out of court, and as Fox and One America News and these other right-wing nuts are finding out in court, you keep rolling the dice long enough, and sooner or later you're going to come up snake eyes. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Busey, Nyan Pharmacy, Murad Campbell, Brandon, and Keith. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.